All right, guys, we'll go ahead and start our work session. With us tonight, we have Miss Cindy Bryant. Miss Bryant was hired by the city just a few months ago to do a work study on our wage and benefit program that we have with the city, just simply to see where we was at and to get a true feel on where we need to be going forward. So Ms. Bryant is with H&R Solutions out of Columbia, Tennessee. Came highly recommended by MTAS, and so the board approved it, and she has been working with us now about 4 months. Miss Cindy, is that right? 4 or 5 months? And she has came up and talked to some of the employees, not all, but all supervisors, office workers, and a few others, I believe. And has got a pretty good report that we're going to take a look at. Again, this is a work session. There is no action to be took tonight. It's a lengthy report, but thorough report. And so this is something that we can look at and then perhaps have another discussion again 1st of May, okay? So that's where we are, and I'll turn it over to Miss Cindy Bryant.
Okay. Hello, everybody. How are you? It's good to see y'all again. Yes. You got it. Okay. How's that?
That's great.
Beautiful. All right. So what I plan to do tonight is I've got a PowerPoint presentation to hit the highlights, okay? I know you don't want me to sit here, and believe me, I don't want to sit here and read this report to all of y'all. That would be the surest way to put you to sleep. So what I tried to do was extract out of the report kind of the main points that I want you to focus on. There are lots of recommendations in here, bless you. And one of the things that I will tell you is the same thing I tell any organization of any size. There's lots of information in here. There's lots of recommendations. There's no way you or any other sized organization can implement everything in here immediately. But it's food for thought, right? So you might look at this and you might say, okay, this upcoming year, this upcoming budget year, here's what we can do. And this is it. And that's okay. And then you might look at that and say, but over the next couple of years, 2, 3, whatever, this is our direction. These are the steps we want to look at taking. Okay? So I'm going to kind of roll that out to you, give you an opportunity to ask questions, give you an opportunity to identify any errors that I may have made or anything like that. Before we get started, does anybody have any questions? All right, so you do, Curtis gave me a great introduction, so thank you. I keep telling him if he'll just put me a hitching post out front, I'll ride my horses over and just, hitch up, but I did not do that tonight. A little bit of background. So as Curtis said, you guys asked me to come in and do a compensation review and development of some competitive pay structures for you. So what we did is Phyllis was kind enough, and all of your department heads were kind enough to send me their job descriptions. We took a look at those because the job descriptions are what we use to make sure we're comparing your jobs accurately to other jobs, okay? We don't care what the title is. As a matter of fact, when I'm comparing jobs, many times I don't tell the department leader what the title is of the jobs I'm comparing because they will get tunnel vision to a particular title and then they won't hear anything else, okay? So I usually just strip that off of there. We reviewed your current pay plans and policies, and we looked at it in terms are your current positions competitively graded, and identify what we call compression issues. Wage compression is just, it's a phenomenon that happens when the market is changing more rapidly than how you are changing internally. And what happens in that situation is you end up hiring people with less skill, knowledge, ability, tenure, and these types of things, and they're actually making more sometimes than your long-term employees. We call that wage compression. Happens to everybody because, for example, the average wage increase for any organization, large or small, is about 3% a year. Well, in the last couple of years, we have seen wages jump 8, 10, 12%. Well, you can see all of a sudden, if those wages are jumping 8, 10, 12%, and you've only been giving, 1%, 2%, 3%, you can quickly outpace your current employees. So we took a look to see what's going on there. Provide recommendations to mitigate any inequities that we found, and then help you develop internal processes for in-grade pay adjustments. And I'll explain what that means here in a little bit, because y'all right now don't have pay grades, so to speak. Give you some guidelines on how to administer your pay policies, especially when we have new employees whose knowledge and experience is above the minimum, okay? We were going to look at recommendations and implementation strategies. So how do you roll this out without upsetting the apple cart? Provide a communication plan and administrative guidelines to inform and educate all of your employees. And we use stakeholders here because all of you are stakeholders, the employees are stakeholders, the community is a stakeholder. And then provide an overall final report. Okay, and then we want to help facilitate any kind of informational meetings with any of you or any of the executive leaders to review the process and tasks to be performed with the study. So that was kind of what we were commissioned to do. Now, I do want to highlight, because there's lots of things here at the City of Livingston that are going well, okay? This is in your report. But first of all, your employees are hardworking and they're dedicated. And I want you to understand that. I did not have very many, if at all. Yes?
I just got a quick question.
Yes.
Are we supposed to be going page by page, or what do we do?
You know what? Yes, let me help you with that.
If not, that's okay, but if so, I don't want to be caught off guard. That's right.
I believe that I put this in here, but let me... You know what? And I take it back. I did not put this slide in there. The next slide coming up with employee concerns, we're going to be on page 3. And thank you, Curtis, because I'll call your attention to that. But I do want you to know, you've got really hardworking, dedicated employees. They are not, I did not hear complaints from them. They weren't disgruntled by and large. I mean, you have a few who have questions, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Many employees expressed a high satisfaction and pride in their jobs here at the city. They're thankful to have them. They're thankful for everything that you do for them. And they felt like that things by and large here in the city are going well. Your city and your tax base are growing. So that's a good problem to have. And the city, if is implementing, that's not an if, that's an is, the city's implementing a new payroll system. And that is something that's going very well as well. And I know that helps fill us out a great deal. Because as you'll see in a little bit, we did have a little bit of a tough time with your current payroll system getting accurate information and accurate job titles and those kind of things, just simply because you're limited by your current payroll system. So I think that will help fill us tremendously. You also have a number of things, and I've just got a couple up here, but there are a number of things that you do for your employees that are well received, and they are good methods of recognition. So for example, there is an annual Christmas dinner party, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's ribeye steaks for Christmas, and that is well received, and it's just something to say thank you to your employees, and it does not go unnoticed. And also there is a Christmas bonus in the form of a gift card, primarily for groceries or something like that, and that is always welcomed by your employees. So these things we consider to be going very well, and we want to encourage you to continue doing those.
So do we have a current software system like ADP or Paychecks or something like that, or what are we
With local
looking at?
government now,
Hmm?
we just made the transition now
To,
local government program.
okay.
The system we've got is only for governments.
Okay.
It's not in the private sector.
Okay.
Right. Yep. So the upgrading of that is going to help tremendously, I think. Now, over on page 3, it's at the bottom of page 3, you can see employee concerns, okay? And I've got them highlighted up here. Pay is well below the competitive market for competitive county or city positions, okay? Medical benefits, they're good, and everybody, now don't get me wrong, people are not complaining, okay? But they're not as competitive as they could be for other city and counties, okay? Leaders and employees do not fully understand the process used to determine starting pay and annual increases. There's not currently a performance management process. Now, I like performance management systems. I like having employees not only know what their jobs are through their job description, but having goals and objectives, having performance reviews, giving feedback, even allowing pay increases based on merit. However, I also feel your pain. You're a small city. Your employees, including your leaders, they're reviewing their neighbors, and that's hard to do. So Curtis and I have talked about this, because if you're not committed to doing performance management right, don't do it at all, okay? Because you just make everybody mad. There's no reason to do it. But it can be a very useful tool to motivate people if it's used correctly. But you've got some obstacles, okay? You're not a Fortune 100 organization where people know each other, but they don't live right down the street from one another, or they haven't known each other for generations and those kind of things. So, yeah, there's some obstacles for us there if we do decide to implement something like that. Your HR practices. Phyllis does a fabulous job, but they're not standardized. Each department has their own way of doing things. They have their own job descriptions, their own titles, their own formats, these types of things. So we would recommend that where possible, you standardize. It will get you some economies of scale so that you're more efficient, because things are just repeatable. There's power in repetition. Leaders, okay, so this is both a concern and a recommendation, similar to performance evaluations. Leaders here use a sliding scale when hiring, and you should, okay, so I applaud that. But to your employees, there's some communication that needs to go along with that, because they don't always understand it. And I understand their perspective as well, because some of them feel like, I have been here for 10 years, and you're going to hire somebody in, and they're going to make the same thing I do. Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, we talked about wage compression a few minutes ago. Wage compression happens when you hire a new hire with no experience, or maybe 1 or 2 years, at the same amount you are paying your tenure person. It is not wage compression to bring in somebody with 10 years of experience and pay them the same thing your tenure person is making. So we encourage you to use that sliding scale, and we'll talk more about it in a few minutes, but it does come up as a concern for some of your employees. So there's some work that we have to do on that one as well. There's no formal reward and recognition program. You're doing some really good things. We talked about the Christmas party. We talked about the bonus. You provide safety equipment for people. You know, your employees they have a lot of flexibility. So there's lots of things you do, but I want to make sure you get credit for that, because sometimes employees get so accustomed to these things that they forget that they're perks for recognition and reward. So we want to make sure that they recognize you don't have to do some of these things. And then we see this, and it's not just with the city of Livingston. We see this across all industries, all jobs. People are not as interested in making a career here as they may have been at one time. And so that is going to put some force or put some market pressure on you because you're going to start to see more and more turnover. In the past, we had very, very low turnover, but it could very well increase your turnover in the future. So it's something we need to think about. Any questions?
I'm new.
Okay.
So
Welcome.
I just, from August or whatever, do we have a dedicated HR person here?
So the HR folks are kind of looking at this Phil's area.
There's not a dedicated
Yeah,
HR.
we do.
Okay, all right. I'm just learning.
Yeah,
No, it's a good question.
Phyllis's payroll and personnel, we kind of tag team the HR with our attorney.
Okay.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So,
And I do.
yes, sir.
I do want to talk just a little bit about the performance evaluation. We are probably going to start that back up because one of the reasons is she has recommended it in other schools that I have too as well. The issue that we have had in the past, and I'm not telling you anything that I didn't tell the supervisors just this past week or last week, is our evaluations to their employees checked all high marks. And then when it come to discipline an employee and you pull the personnel file and that performance evaluation shows a model employee, it makes it difficult for a whole lot of discipline at the end of the day. And that went on for many, many years, so we stopped it. But I think that we can try it again and make sure it's done accurate. I just wanted to talk about that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so let's talk a little bit about market trends. I just want you to know what's going on out there in the marketplace where you are competing to hire people and to keep your own people, okay? So during 2021 and 2022, there was a new phrase coined post-COVID, and it was called the Great Resignation. There were a lot of employees across all industries, all size companies, that as soon as organizations and cities and counties began opening up again, employees were ready to make a leap to somewhere new. The grass is always greener on the other side. Some employees felt like their companies or their cities or counties did not take enough precautions during COVID. They felt like they were overworked during COVID. Whatever the case may be, they came out of it ready to make a leap to a new organization. And so that created what we called the Great Resignation. Some of that is also due to changing mindsets. So right now, any organization has, on average, 5 generations in the workplace. We have a few, what we call traditionals, and they are in their 70s, but there are a few still around that are still working. Then we have baby boomers. That's our second one. And then baby boomers, we go to Gen X, okay? Gen Y and Gen Z. Gen Zs are going to be in your early to mid-20s, okay? Gen Ys are going to be in their late 30s to 40s. Gen X's, they're now in their 40s to early 50s, and baby boomers now are, in their 50s to 60s, going into their later years. Boomers started retiring a few years ago, okay? So we have 5 generations, by and large, in the workplace. And all of those generations have different mindsets, different value structures, and these kind of things. And it does create some issues in the workplace. Coming out of COVID, people re-examined their values, okay? This idea of remote work, hybrid workplaces. I'm not willing to work and do anything above and beyond if I'm not getting paid for it. We call it quiet quitting, okay? And that phenomenon, it is a TikTok phenomenon, How many of you are on TikTok? Anybody? Okay. TikTok right now is ruling the world, okay? Because anything that goes viral on TikTok, it's everything from wait staff at restaurants complaining about, they didn't get a good enough tip and they're not going to wait on people if they're not going to get a good tip, and on and on and on. But they go viral, and then all of a sudden other people say, well, you know what, they're right. And they start emulating some of that behavior. It's happening here at the city, the counties, small, medium, large organizations as well. So this quiet quitting phenomenon is where people, especially your Gen Y and your Gen Z, feel like, I'm not doing anything that's not in my job description. I'm not doing anything above and beyond because you're not paying me for it, and I'm just not going to do it. And then you compare that to a baby boomer who very often, baby boomers are known to be workaholics. And so they will put in, 40, 50, 60 plus hours a week because their mindset is, my job is my life. I'm going to do whatever it takes. Many baby boomers don't take all their vacation in a year, they do burn out and these kind of things. And quite frankly, a lot of these Gen Ys and Gen Zs saw their parents doing these kind of things, and they missed school functions. They missed them growing up. They missed a variety of things, including getting divorces and these kind of things. And these younger generations said, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to. I work to live. I don't live to work. And that's kind of their mindset, okay? So you are going to see some of these mindsets in some of these statistics here. So if you see here, we've got hires down here on this dark, kind of purplish, dark blue line right here. Right up here, though, we have job openings. Now, somebody said something to me, because I have been trying to crack this nut for a while. Why do we have so few employees? And I don't know if this is a true statement, but it resonated with me, and I've been marinating on it now for about a week. Somebody said to me at the end of last week that a lot of these folks who should be in the workforce, we have created so many nonprofits that they can get help with their heat, with their air conditioning, with their water, with their food, with their house payment, with all of this. And so a lot of them aren't working. They're able-bodied, they're young, they should be working, but there's a whole lot of easy money out there, and a lot of them will go to work, they'll work a few days, they'll get a little bit of jingle in their pocket, and now they're going to go play until that's gone. They'll file claims with different nonprofits, get help with that, and then they might go to work in another month or two. So that could be it. I don't know. I haven't looked into it deeply enough, but there is definitely a huge disconnect between the number of hires and the number of job openings up here. Okay?
National, state?
This is national. This is the U.S. So we pulled all of it just to kind of look at. But you can see, we spiked for unemployment rate, obviously during COVID. The unemployment rate's about what it was prior to COVID, but look where the job openings are compared to now. There's a tremendous difference there, and that's part of the reason why, it's one of the reasons why you may have openings and postings and you can't find people who want to fill them, okay? Then if we look at the labor participation. So this is another national statistic. Labor participation rate looks at the number of able-bodied individuals who are actually in the workforce. So prior to COVID, we were up here, and it's, 63% or so. It dropped way down, as you would expect. Everybody got sent home. People weren't working in 2020. We've come back up somewhat. We're around 62%, but we're still not where we were pre-COVID. Okay, and it's still quite low. You can see back in 2004, we had 66% of our of the able-bodied people who were participating in the workforce. So it's been going down since 2004, and it's continued, and post-COVID it has not come up. Now, another reason why may be this gig economy. People are freelancing, they're 1099s, they're working again when they want to, and they're not working when they don't want to, okay? I haven't cracked this egg because I'm looking for a way, Curtis, I'm looking for a way to be able to pay all the bills and not have to work. If I can figure that out, right? But I just hadn't figured it out yet. Now, I bring this up. Now, this is in your handout, so we are on page 5. Okay? Now, you'll notice government is not up here. And the reason government is not on this particular slide is because there were not enough respondents on this slide. Oh, no, wait a minute. On page 5, government is not on the one in page 5. You are on this one. Yes, sir.
7 on page 7.
I'm on it. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes. So this is the same slide that's on page 7. There's another one on page 5 that looks at turnover as well. I did not include it in the highlight, okay? But I wanted you to have an idea of what the the turnover rate was in other industries. On page 7, and right here, you've got government. Now, let me explain something real quick, because when you look at this, you see the turnover rate is at 53% for government. Now, I will tell you, traditionally, that's pretty high. Government, normally, people go to work in government at any level, local, state, or federal, and they don't leave, okay? So the good news is, or the bad news is, that you're at 53%. The good news is, though, is that that's down 16% from the prior survey. So at one time, it was up closer to 70%, okay? So I thought that was very interesting, and you can compare government to, you know, all the other sectors here within the industries that we looked at, okay? So another market force that you've got going on, you've got large turnover. It's coming out of even that great resignation. You've got people who are not participating in the workforce, don't want to participate in the workforce for whatever reason, and you're competing with all of that to try to hire people when at the same time your wages are quite low. Okay, and we're going to take a look at that as well. So we do have some recommendations, and I'm going to show you the data here and why we made these recommendations. So we do recommend that you consider an immediate 4% across the board pay increase for your employees. And I'm going to show you why here in just a few minutes. So here, what we did is we took your jobs and we broke them into 3 pay tables, all right? So if you are on page 9, at the top of page 9, you're going to see a little chart, and you'll see it says TL, and that is your trades and labor table. All right. We also have an ES, which is emergency services, and we created an emergency services table, and an AP for administrative professional. The reason we broke these out is because these are very different jobs, okay? And we recommend that you have them broken out so that you are paying closer to what, and you're comparing them to similar jobs, either at the city, the county, or outside in the private sector as well. So in our trades and labor table here, okay, one of the things that I did after, and I apologize for that, but I did after your report came out, is I highlighted here. You've got the same data, I've just highlighted it. So if you look here, and if I can do this and come across, you've got a certified operator, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look and make sure I got my line. I've got a certified operator here in my trades and labor. And if I come across, that certified operator is being paid at 77% of the market. Okay, and I've highlighted it in this kind of orangey color because we consider that underpaid. All right, now your other jobs up here that are not highlighted, those are competitive. So it's not across the board that all of your jobs are not competitive, okay? You can see I've got a worker here in trades and labor, and this particular person is paid right at the midpoint, what we call the average, the median, the midpoint. If I look at their wages here, they're paid $14 an hour. Small respondents. So we broke your data into small, medium, and large respondents. And that is based on population size, and if it's cities, how those cities are classified in terms of small, medium, and large. Okay? And then we got a survey average over here, so you can see for this worker, the survey average was $13.43 for small, medium, and large. So what we did is we compared this employee's pay to the average, and that's how we came up with 1.042. So they're paid at average, okay? The average is $13.43, they're paid at 14. Okay, so they're just a hair over average. Anything below 80% is considered underpaid. Okay? Anything over 120% is considered overpaid. And we would do what we call red circling them, which means they just don't get another increase until the range catches up with them. Okay? And I don't believe you had anybody at 120%, so I don't think we have to worry about that. You got a few people at 100%, which is the average. I got another one down here toward the bottom, which is an equipment operator. Okay. Now, in your trades and labor table, these are jobs whose primary duties require knowledge or experience of a trade, a craft, or of manual labor. That's all the ones we put in your trades and labor table. Okay? My apologies. Okay. So, you've got several here that we consider underpaid because they're less than 80%. If we go to your emergency services group, so again, if we look on page 9, emergency services, these include positions providing emergency services, such as the police department in your case. If you were county, it'd be sheriff's department, EMS, emergency management, fire. All of those go into your emergency services table. So we're comparing similar jobs. Now, if you look at these, whoops, let's go back. If you look at these, you can see we have quite a few that we consider underpaid. And I have a correction for you, all right? The very first one up here, this assistant supervisor, you're going to see I've got a market ratio here of 74%. You've got a market ratio of 49%. And the reason for that difference is because Curtis and I were talking last week, and then I talked to Rocky, and the job description that I originally used for this job, there was a better description that better described it, and so I made that change, okay? So that's why you see these numbers have changed, because I used the incorrect job description, okay? And Rocky and Curtis corrected me on that, okay? Now, having your emergency services table have this many people who are below the market is a real concern, because this is your emergency services. The other thing that this does is it drives up your overall costs of doing business, because you're basically a feeder organization for other organizations, whether they're, county fire, county EMS, let's go back to the sheriff's department and those types of things, right? You're bringing people in, you're getting them trained, you're getting them some experience, and then as soon as they can, they're leaving you and going somewhere else. You've invested all that time and money into that training and those certifications, and that's going to create churn for you. okay, which it tends to be a hidden cost. So I know as you, as commissioners, are looking at this and saying, oh my gosh, let's look at our budget, what can we do? We always consider that with wage increases. Oh my goodness, can we do this with a wage increase? But you've got hidden costs that usually don't hit a line item in your budget, although they are costs and you do deal with them on a routine basis. Okay. Now, even with this table, you'll notice most of the ones that are not highlighted here, they're still what I would consider quite low. Remember I said under 80% we consider underpaid, but the majority of yours here are 82, 83, 84% of the market. Okay, I would still consider that low, and one of the reasons I would is you've got a firefighter who has been here since 2016, so he's got 7 years of experience with you, and he's at 87%, okay? That's pretty low for somebody with that much experience. All right, so something to consider there. Okay, questions? Make sense? Because if it doesn't, you guys stop me, okay? This is one of those situations where I do this every day, so it makes complete sense to me, but sometimes I need a good reminder that, hey, it doesn't make sense to us, okay?
Yeah, I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
And you talked about the sliding scale there just a
Yes,
second
sir.
ago. And so if I'm hearing you correct, if we was to hire someone that does not currently work for the city, but has the same experience, maybe the certifications, that they would not start at the initial step.
Correct.
They would go.
And if you'll hold that question,
Yes,
I'm
I
going to
will.
get to it in just a minute.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but yes, you are correct. That is where I'm going. Now, the third table that I did was administrative professional. So again, if you look over there on page 9, your administrative professional, these positions' primary duties include knowledge or experience of an administrative, clerical, scientific, artistic, technical nature, but it's not related to a trade, craft, or manual labor. Okay, so by and large, this is where your administrative staff, your clerks, your directors, your supervisors, whether they are highways, streets, parks, whatever the case may be, are going to go into this administrative table. We highlighted again here folks that are, or positions that are under 80% of the market ratio. Okay, you've got a couple that are right at, this one's at 110% as your building inspector, okay? 109% is your utility clerk, okay? And 112% is a certified water plant supervisor. Okay. So those are paid right at average. So those are good. Some of your others you can say they're not highlighted, but they're better than the emergency services was. You've got some in the 90s here, you've got a couple in the 80s, but most of them are 90s, 93, 95% of the market ratio, okay? Okay, so remember we started with the first recommendation was a 4% across the board increase. Our second recommendation is consider paying more of your employees' health and welfare plans, okay? So if you look over there on page 13, right now you offer two different plans. One is a PPO, it's a traditional preferred provider organization. The city pays $500 toward that plan. Okay. You also offer a high deductible plan, and with that one, the city pays $400 toward that plan. It's a flat rate, okay? And Phyllis, you let me know, because you're the expert on this, so make sure I didn't misinterpret anything here, okay? However, what we see most often is if you turn over to page 14, this is just an example, but this is closer to what I traditionally see, where if you will notice at the top, again, you've got a PPO plan, okay? And then you've got 3 options within that PPO plan. You've got a premier, a standard, and a limited plan. So your employees get to select what best suits them and their families, all right? For the premier plan, the total premium is $827. And in this case, the county pays $738. Okay, so they're paying a large portion of that. And then you can see the sliding scale for benefits here, not to be confused with pay, but what the county in this case is going to pay for each of the levels: employee plus children, employee plus spouse, and family. Okay. However, if the employee steps up or steps down from the premier plan to the standard plan, you see employee only is $760, so they're paying less, but the percentage is similar. And then if they take the limited plan, the county or the city, in this case it's the county, pays even less, okay? So it provides your employees with more options. It is a percentage. You don't have any control, obviously, over which one your employees select here. And then it goes to your biweekly premium as well, okay? Now, the other options that some organizations do that you can consider as well is for your high deductible plan. A few years ago, we were all trying to encourage employees to go toward the high deductible plans because they were taking on more of the risk of the plan. Because high deductible plans don't pay anything until you meet your deductible, okay? Well, the insurance companies decided they were not making enough profit on those plans, so they have started getting the premiums closer to the PPO, which kind of boggles my mind after doing this for as many years as I've been doing it, but you got to love insurance companies, right? I'm with you. And so many organizations, either at the city or the county level, would pay a higher portion of the high deductible plan than they paid for the PPO because, again, they want the employee to assume more of the responsibility, okay? Another option that I have seen cities and counties that you could consider is they will, with a high deductible plan, you can have what's called a health savings account. It's like a vacation account, right? I'm going to the bank, I'm going to have $50 out of each paycheck put in this vacation account, and at the end of the year, I'm going on this nice vacation to the Bahamas because I've tucked away this money. Your health savings account works similar. Each pay period, you tuck something away, and it just builds up and builds up and builds up, and then if you need to go to the doctor or the hospital, whatever, you've got a debit card that you can use for some or all of those expenses, depending on how much you have in your account. Many cities and counties and private organizations will contribute an amount to their employees' HSA. So if you want to incentivize employees to take on more of the risk for the health plan and go to the HSA, you might contribute $500 a year or $1,000 a year or whatever it may be. It goes into your employee's health savings account. That becomes their money. You don't ever get that back. It's in there, but you can pay it per pay period, so you don't have to advance it all at one time. But those are some things that you can consider if instead of an increase, you wanted to, if you said, I think medical, dental, vision, those kind of things are more important this year than doing the 4% increase.
Is that the same as a Benny card?
I'm not familiar with that term. Say that, is it a Benny card, B-E-N-N-Y? I don't know. I have never heard that term. Tell me more.
Well, they just put money in it, and then they got to use the money that's in that account by the end of the year. That's
a flexible spending account, okay? Health savings accounts are always the employees. You don't have to use it by the end of the year. You can, as a matter of fact, I had an employee last year, that he had had his health savings account for, I don't know, several years, and not only was the company putting money in, but he was as well. He had over $25,000 in his health savings account. Because your health savings account, the employee contribution to the health savings account is pre-taxed. And so it goes in there pre-taxed, and then when they use it, it's pre-taxed, but it never expires. It is always the employee's. A flexible spending account, that one you do have to use by the end of the year. They actually have started now letting you carry it over till March of the next year, but and you can technically carry over $500 from year to year, but there are some restrictions on that one. You've got to use it or lose it. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Did you say HSA?
Yep, health savings account.
Yeah, so how does that stack up with the affordable health care that employers have to be in compliance with? Does that, because I've never heard, when I go to a lot of meetings with cities, that they have went to this plan versus the affordable health care plan.
So the Affordable Care Act, what it does is it says, theoretically, that your health plan must be affordable. And that is predicated on what your employees pay for the employee only. So in this case, in this chart, you've got a premium, a standard, and a limited plan. So when you do the test for the ACA, you're looking at this employee on the limited plan for the employee only is $52.44, and that's what we would use to test to see is it affordable based on what that employee makes. Okay, so if you look at the if you look at the premium plan, the employee monthly premium is $88.80, but for the limited it's $64.56. So the $88.80 may not be affordable. It may not pass the test, but the test is not predicated on the best plan. It's predicated on the lowest plan. It's also, that test has nothing to do with employee plus family coverage or employee plus spouse or children. It is only on employee only, okay? So you could offer a high deductible plan with an HSA, along with a PPO, or you could just offer a high deductible. The ACA is only concerned, does it meet the coverage requirements, and your high deductible plans, unless they have a completely outrageous deductible and out of pocket. But the insurance companies have gotten pretty good at these. You know, they will meet the ACA requirements. So you could absolutely do that, okay? So something to think about there. You have, what you're doing now, there is nothing wrong with what you're doing now, okay? Remind me, Phyllis, do you provide that $500 or $400 whether they purchase insurance or not? Good, okay. Because every now and then I will have somebody and they will give a stipend whether you buy insurance or not, and that is not okay under ACA. So sometimes I have to straighten them out, so good for you. All right. The city here provides life insurance for $25,000, okay? Which is good. There's nothing wrong with that at all. There are, however, there are a number of cities and counties who will do one times your pay. So if you make $50,000 a year, your life insurance policy is $50,000. Or, you know, you could go up to $75,000 at 1.5. So consider some of those types of options. Make sure whoever you're using for a benefits broker that you have somebody who's helping you negotiate, because if you're offering a life insurance plan, Phyllis, I couldn't find anything about an employee assistance program. Did I miss it? Do you have an employee assistance program?
Yeah.
It is in there. Okay, good, because I was going to say with that life insurance policy, usually you can get the insurance companies to provide an EAP at no additional cost. So you want to make sure that you're really working with those benefit brokers on your plan design to make sure you're maximizing those benefits for your employees, and then also make sure you're communicating with your employees what all is available. And your broker very often can help you do that. They can help you with posters, with text messages, whatever the case may be, to remind your employees every month, hey, this is Mental Health Month. Here's some of your benefits that cover that provided by the city. We want to make sure you get full credit for everything you are doing. Because if you don't remind your employees, trust me, they won't remember. Okay? They do not connect dots. It's amazing how that happens, but they do not connect dots. Any questions on benefits? Okay, I am going to show you in a few minutes. So we talked about, I showed you the pay tables. I'm going to show you because we're going to recommend a step progression for pay increases. Right now, you have somewhat of a progression because by and large, employees, depending on what their job is and what department it is, they're either getting 10 or 20 cents a year, each year, or some variation there. We're going to look at a stair-step compensation progression that keeps you closer to market each year. And the purpose of us doing that is if you stay competitive with the market, you are less likely to have turnover. Okay, so I'm going to show you. Now, it's a different, it does require some budgeting here. The next one is in industry for quite a few years. Industry has been using something that came out of Motorola probably 20 years ago or more. And it's called the Six Sigma or Black Belt program, okay? And in your handout here, let me see, because I am pretty sure. Yep, over on page 17. I put some information in what is a Black Belt program, okay? Basically, what Six Sigma is Six Sigma, you train employees. You have some people who are master certified. That's where the white belt, yellow belt, it follows that. And eventually you could have a black belt certified Six Sigma person. But they are looking for process improvements. They're looking for, how do I take cost out of our systems, our processes here at the city, because if I can take cost out of what we're doing, I can move that money, that expense, over to something else, okay? It's not well used in city or county or even state or federal governments, but there are a few. There's a city closer to West Tennessee, not truly West Tennessee, it's still considered Middle Tennessee, but it's getting there, it's pretty close. And they use a black belt program. They, on average, have given 5, 6, 7% increases every year over the past 5 or 6 years, and they funded it with no increase to their budget because of implementing a program like this, okay? Completely different way of thinking about how city government works, okay? They've also done it, and they haven't reduced headcount. Unless they have had people who left, and because of the efficiencies that they created, they didn't need to hire somebody to backfill them. Okay, so it's something to think about. We also recommend that you do some process standardization. So I mentioned earlier that some of your HR processes, each department kind of does their own things, but there's a lot of repetition there. Rather than having standardized processes where each department head says, well, this is how this is done, and the heavy lifting's already been done from them, they're having to do their own processes in some cases, which redundancy creates some of those inefficiencies that you might find with a black belt program. We also recommend that you provide career planning opportunities for your employees. So let's take, for example, in your police, you've got a patrol deputy. Is there a way, and I think, Curtis, you do some of this, we want to expand this program, but is there a way you could be a deputy 1 versus a deputy 2 versus a deputy 3, and now I have a career track and I know I can continue to grow, to advance. also to maximize my earnings potential as well. So now if a city down the street or a county calls and they want me to come down there, well, why would I come down there? Because I have a similar career opportunity here. Okay, so we want to encourage you to continue doing those types of things as well, creating those career ladders, if you will, and you could do that through a lot of things. Phyllis has got some folks in her administrative group. You could come in as a clerk, then as a tax clerk, then as, you know, an AP or whatever, where you create those career progressions. Now, you guys use a part-time grant writer. I think that is one of the best things that you do, okay? Because grant writers can pay, they can more than pay their salary. If everybody could pay more than pay their salary, we'd be sitting pretty, right? But grant writers are one of those cases, and grant writers are experienced in how do you phrase things, how do you set up systems, how do you set up and write the reports in order to have a better chance of getting awarded the grant. Now, sometimes what I hear from cities and counties is well, that's great, but to get the grant, we've got to have the money up front to be able to complete whatever we want to implement, and then we'll get the grant, but we don't have that in our budget. I would encourage you in those cases, borrow the money. I know you don't want to. Borrow the money. Let's say you've got a $50,000 grant. Go down to the bank, borrow the $50,000, implement the project, right? And then when you get the grant money, go pay it off at the bank, right? But grant writers can really help you get money outside of your budget for the things that you want to be able to do within the city. And correct me if I'm wrong, Curtis, but that gorgeous park that you had came from a grant. And you guys, I have to admit, I got the Farm Bureau magazine, and I opened it up, and I almost thought I had to read the article because I was sure that was the city of Livingston's park, because it was absolutely beautiful. Should have been, yes, it should have. I mean, when I first saw it, I thought, ooh, wait a minute, I know where this is. But that is a perfect example of using and leveraging that grant writer. So I want to encourage you to use that grant writer even more, okay? Even to the point of thinking about, should we hire one full-time? All right. Create performance appraisals. Curtis, you mentioned this a few minutes ago, and you were talking about that. So find ways to implement employee self-care. All right. Now, I will tell you, as a late Gen Xer, I'm right on the cusp, right? If I sneezed, I could be a boomer, and if I use another scale, I'm an Xer, right? I work all the time, right? I start sometimes at 5 a.m. and I get home at 9 or 10 at night, because that's just what I do. Your Gen Ys and Gen Zs, they do not do that. Okay, remember I talked about quiet quitting? They don't do this. So the more things that you can do to offer them opportunities for self-care, the more you're going to be able to attract them. Okay, so are there some jobs, not all of them will, but if there are jobs that lend themselves to remote work, can you let somebody work a hybrid? They're here on site a couple of days a week and they work from home a couple of days a week, right? We see that is a huge attraction for these younger workers. Can you have flex time, right? So your hours are posted 7 to 4:30? 8 to 4:30. Is there any way to have flex time that if you've got single mothers or single parents, doesn't have to be a mother, but they need to get their kids to school, is there a way they could come in at 8:30, but they're here during core hours? So they might come in at 8:30, but they work till 5, right? Or something. And it may not be possible, but things that are there ways that we can create self-care for our employees. Your EAP, so I want to make sure we highlight that. Any benefits for mental health, especially for your emergency services personnel, okay? Just think about what happened in Nashville a couple of weeks ago with Covenant School, right? And, I hate to say that. 30 years ago, I didn't have to worry about that stuff, right? Today I do. And so, you know,
Had an incident today in Louisville, Kentucky.
oh no, are you serious? They seem to come in pockets, if you've noticed. We'll have a dry spell and then they happen boom, 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 one right after the other. But think about that in terms of what type of mental health benefits do you have for your employees. Now, under ACA, you have to have mental health benefits in there, but do your employees know about it, right? Can you do something a couple of times a year where you have people come into the city and, you know, you allow people to, you allow them to talk about what their resources are and these kind of things, all right? It's all about elevating through things that may not cost the city anything additional, but having the publicity to your employees so that they know and that you're doing it because you care about them. That goes a long way.
Yeah, and we do have Blue Cross Blue Shield Secret
Good.
in the state of Tennessee comes in annually.
Wonderful. So if they're coming in, you could broaden that out to some of the mental health services. You know, have somebody on site that might be a therapist through Blue Cross Blue Shield or something like that, just to let people know what's available. Obviously, you know, I'm not looking for them to have a session while they're in here, but to get in touch with resources. We might. I'm telling you, we might. I'm telling you. All right. Any questions up to this point? So that kind of gives you a highlight of some of the recommendations, okay? Now, Curtis, I'm going to come back to your question here in a minute because I want to go through and let's look at these pay tables. Same pay tables. Trades, which is blue, emergency services, which is kind of this light yellow, and then AP, which is a light green, okay? So, Curtis, to your point, here, you'll see I've got a trades and labor 1, a trades and labor 2, and on this sheet, a trades and labor 3. Those are your grades, okay? A grade 1, 2, and 3. And I think I've got a total of maybe 6 grades for trades and labor. If you hired this sanitation worker, all right, and let's say this person has absolutely no experience at all. I mean, they've never really done anything, right? We're suggesting you could bring them in at a training wage. Now, that training wage is under the, well under the average, okay? But they come in at $12 an hour to see how they're going to work, to see if they're going to work. Are they going to stick around for more than a week, right? But then, when they complete their introductory period, you would look to move them to this $12.36, okay? So they get a nice increase after 90 days, let's say. Now, here between step 1 and step 2 to step 3 and so forth and so on, these are approximately 3% increases. Okay? Now that's totally different. Remember I said previously the way your folks got increases, they were like 10, 20, 30, 40 cents a year. Okay, this goes to like a 3% increase every year. But remember I said on average, whether it's private sector or whether it's government, on average, the increase per year is about 3%, notwithstanding the last couple of years, because those were anomalies, and we are seeing it return more to the 3 to 4%, okay? Now, to your point, and I think I'm going to answer it, and if I don't, Curtis, you ask me again. Let's say you have somebody that moves here, and they've been a sanitation worker where they were previously, and they've been doing it for 5 years, okay? And you're bringing them in. No, I don't necessarily want you to start them at 12 or 12.36. I'm going to look more at starting them down here at step 5, because remember, you move from step to step each year, unless there's a reason to move them sooner. So they've got 5 years of experience. I'm going to bring them in. They're making $13.91. I may have somebody who's been here for 2 years and they're making $12.73. And your question is going to be, well, how come they come in and they're making $1 more an hour? And the reason they are is because they have 5 years of experience. You have 2 years of experience. Make sense? Even though both years of those experience have been here at the City of Livingston. So we do recommend that sliding scale because that's the only way you can be competitive to hire new people. Okay, but there is a lot of communication that has to go on, that the reason is not because I'm hiring them off the street. The reason I'm hiring them in at $13.91 is because they have 5 years of experience. Okay. We also hear, now these grades from the starting pay to step 10 would be what we consider the maximum or top out pay. Okay. These are set based on what was in your table earlier for the average. Remember that market average that I gave you in the previous tables? Let me go back. Okay, so remember this survey average right here? Okay, so we can talk about Curtis here for a minute. This survey average right here is what we used to create, and so let's look at this sanitation worker. So here's my sanitation worker. The market average is $13.43. Okay, so now I'm going to flip back over here to these pay tables. All right, that $13.43 is right at step 4 here. Okay, we used that average in order to get as close as we could to build this table. And we did that for every job that you have. Okay.
Your market average would be around 4 to 5 years.
Say that again?
So you'd pay market average around year 4 or year 5.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Now, there's a lot of ways to do that. This is the most common way to do it. You take the market average, it becomes your average pay. Anything below 100% is kind of your early entry into experience and those types of things. So when you get to 100% of the comp ratio in this case, so when you get to step 4, step 5, you're considered fully competent in that job. So now let's go back to what Curtis said earlier. I get here to step 4, I'm fully competent. I'm at 100% of my market or my comp ratio. We implement that performance piece to your performance appraisals. Between step 4 and step 10 is all based on how well are you performing based on that performance review. So now I don't guarantee you're going to step 5. It's pretty much, if you're performing, you're going to go to step 5, but it's not an automatic guarantee, because if I'm not performing, Curtis and his department heads could withhold that step increase right there. And they could withhold it for 6 months, or they could withhold it for the whole year.
So your quiet quitters will be at step 4 forever.
Could be. Could be, absolutely. Until the market changes, right? But by doing this 3% from year to year, it keeps you competitive. Whereas if I'm at 1236 and today I go to 1246, I'm not necessarily, I'm losing ground every single year as an employee. This is what helps create pay compression or wage compression. You see my street laborer here. Now, not every job has its own grade, okay? So I'm going to show you that here in just a minute. See, for example, the majority of your jobs fell to trades and labor pay grade 4, all right? So when we looked at this, we said our gas labor, our sewer worker, our water and sewer labor, our uncertified water plant operator, all 4 of those have similar pay in the market. So we grouped all of those into trades and labor pay grade 4. Okay. Now, again, you've got 3% increases. We look down here, pay grade 5 is your sanitation driver and your meter reader. If we look at pay grade 6, you've got a welder, a sewer operator, a certified water plant operator. And now these, they're more skilled positions, so to keep them competitive, we looked at 4% increases here, as we did with your heavy equipment operator. And then your highest here is your diesel or senior mechanic. And then we did the same thing for your firefighters, your emergency services. Now, whereas this table has 10 steps to top out, we did do 13 with emergency services. Okay? Same logic is used here where, now not every job, you notice a dispatcher does not have a training wage, but these entry-level points here, for an entry-level firefighter or records clerk, you could use a training wage. Okay, we allowed that in that one. Okay? And we use the same methodology, your officers or SROs here. Now, keep in mind, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the budget, the governor's proposal for more state money going to SROs, did I not hear that got approved? Does anybody know?
I know it was being proposed. I don't know if it's been budgeted yet.
Okay.
They took the SRO funds away from us last year.
Okay, but after Covenant, they're looking at, I believe, $30 million to go to all schools, right? And so that may be a boost right there to your SROs as well. Okay. Now here, when you look, some of these lower steps, it's a 2.5% increase. You'll move to a 3%, and then even up to a 3.5. So it's kind of a graduated movement here for these officers and the SROs to keep us up to market. You got your master patrol officer here, your detective, investigator, and sergeant versus your assistant supervisor. Now, I will have to tell you, I looked at your assistant supervisor for your pay table earlier. I did not move it here. I may have to move them up here, okay? Because remember I said that I had used the wrong job description. So I didn't look at this table and if this is still correct. And my guess is I got to move it. Maybe not, but we'll see. Now, I didn't have anybody in this grade. So emergency services 10, grade 10, there's no job in that right now. The reason I left it as a pay grade 10 right here instead of making this a 10 is because there's too big of a jump between a 9 and an 11 if I just omit that. And you may, as the city grows, you may very well find that you add some jobs that are slotted right in here. Okay, so we gave it to you just to make sure the continuity made sense. And we did the same thing for your AP table. Okay. And you can just kind of walk through them. Your biggest one, again, fell right here to AP 8. Now, notice, I do want to call your attention to that. This training wage is at AP 1, which is grade 1, and then I skipped to 4. Part of the reason I did that, and I did that on most of these, I don't think I started at 1 with anybody, with any of the 3 pay tables, because people psychologically, they think, I'm the lowest paid. Well, you're still the lowest paid, but there's something about saying that you're a grade 4 that just works different. So part of it is psychology here too. All right. Questions? Does it make sense? Phyllis, did I get my numbers wrong? Okay, good, because I might have. So I have to tell you, Curtis and I, we were talking about this the other day, and he's like, you've got to have this to Phyllis by noon on Thursday in order for us to have this meeting. And I'm like, okay, Curtis, I can do this, right? And I'm going to tell you, I sat down and I found an error. Phyllis, you can relate to this. I found an error in my formula in the spreadsheet. And had you not had me do this right here, Curtis, I would not have caught that error. But I did. There was a formula error, and it had carried through to every one of them. And I thought, you got to be kidding me. So I am so thankful. So if you find another one, let me know. But I have been through this thing like 14 times. So, any questions?
Board members, anybody have any questions for Ms.?
Is what you found what you expected, or what jumped out at you the most alarming, or?
Yeah, small cities and small counties, I find it more with small counties than I do cities. And you guys are close enough to Cookeville and to Knoxville that you've kind of, you can see you've got some areas that we've got work to do, but you're not terrible. When I work with counties that are really rural counties, I find that they're in much worse shape than you are. But like I said, I wasn't surprised because wages moved so fast through 2021 and 2022. Now, in 2022, I tried to tell some of my clients, because they were doing 5-6% wage increases. I mean, they were doing what I considered to be some really questionable things. And they were doing it with the best of intentions. But then once they implemented that, we started seeing companies pull back a little bit. So I think they were a little premature. So I think your timing is perfect, because I think the data that we have now, it's kind of like the housing market. If you look at the housing market over the last couple of years, people were coming in, they were making just unreasonable offers. I mean, people's houses were selling for 20-30% over the asking price. And that was driving prices up. Well, the housing market has now started to stabilize. Well, the labor market is starting. If we can figure out why there's this disparity between the number of jobs available and the workforce, if we can figure that out and get people back into the workforce, it'll probably stabilize even more.
You mentioned that over the last couple of years, there have been 8, 10, 12% increases. And
That's right.
that's really extravagant.
Oh, I'm telling you, yeah. And like I said, and with my clients that did some of those, because I had a couple who was right in the middle of that, one of the things that we had to pull back on is we also had people, what drove some of that is cost of living increases. I am not a big proponent, by the way, of cost of living. And the reason I'm not is because we've seen 8, 9, 10+% cost of living over the last year or two. Well, so your employees, if you get into cost of living increases, they think, oh, I need to get 10% because cost of living is up 10%. But then when cost of living goes down 5%, they don't want to give back 5%, right? That's not how it works. And so you really kind of train your employees to have this entitlement mentality if you use a general or a cost of living. So I don't like those. But I had several organizations who did cost of livings at 8 or 9%. And then coming into this year, we had to go back to employees and say, okay, we did this cost of living. We're moving toward a performance merit-based increase in the future, so don't expect this. And we're trying to manage their expectation. And if we do it well and we keep it in front of them and keep communicating that, we shouldn't have, not that everybody's going to be excited about a 3% increase in the future, but they're expecting it and they've heard it for 11 months as opposed to just all of a sudden, well, last year I got 10%, I'm only getting 3, this year I'm getting cheated. All right? Our goal is not to have you lose people because of this, right? It's to stabilize your workforce.
Couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
Have you, in your experience, have you ever seen the wages go up as much in the last 15, 24 months as it has?
No. The last time I saw this was in the mid-90s. And it wasn't so much that base pay was going up like this, it was that we got in a talent war in the mid-90s and companies were offering signing bonuses and, longevity bonuses and all kinds of stuff to attract people and get them in there. Wages did go up, but they didn't go up, 10, 12, 15%, but they did go up. That was the last time I saw anything like this. So... And we didn't have the gig economy, and we didn't have TikTok back then. TikTok is the bane of my existence right now. Okay. Now, if you were to implement something like this and these step progressions, then the step progressions become the increase. So if you have done COLAs and things like that, you wouldn't give a COLA on top of this, okay? This is what you would give people. You would add that performance component. Now, let's say, and you don't have anybody right now in danger of this, but let's say you get somebody up to step 10 in your trades and labor table, and that's their top out pay. but they do a really good job, and you want to recognize them some way. Well, here you might give them a cost of living. Let's say, instead of the steps are normally 3%. Well, I'm going to give you a one-time lump sum 3% to recognize your contribution this year, but I'm not adding it to your base wages because I don't want, the market hasn't moved, but I do want to recognize you. We recommend something like that for your highest performing employees. Okay, average performing employees would only be eligible for the step increase, but if you did a cost of living, they would not be eligible for both. Okay, and underperforming employees would not be eligible for the step increase. If you gave a cost of living, again, they might get a one-time if you wanted to do that, but you're not. They're losing out on something, because if you're going to implement a performance component, there's got to be a big enough spread between my top performers and what they get and my bottom performers to make it worthwhile. Okay, and what I mean by that is if my top performers get 20 cents an hour for being a top performer as an increase, and my lowest performing employees get 10 cents an hour increase, that's only a 10 cent an hour difference. Your top performers are going to say, I am not going to bust my hump, and for 10 cents an hour, it's not worth it. And you're going to lower their performance. Okay? But if your top performers get $1 an hour and your bottom performers get none, or they get 20 cents, now the bottom performers start saying, no, wait a minute. What have I got to do to get this $1 an hour? So that's what we want to try to do with the performance. Okay. Promotions, we recommend that if an employee is promoted to a higher pay grade, so instead of that grade 1 or grade 2 as a sanitation worker, let's say I move into a higher paying role, then you're going to adjust that employee to the step in the new grade that is closest to a 6% increase, but not less than 5%. Okay? And that just, again, you're recognizing with 5 or 6% here that this is really a promotion. Okay. Similarly, reclassifications. Now remember, I had that one grade that didn't have any positions in it. So if in the future we reclassify one to go into that grade, or we reclassify one to go into any grade, then employees on the pay table whose position is reclassified are slotted into the new pay grade at the step closest to it, right? You still want to maintain the integrity of your steps, so you figure out the one that their reclassification is closest to, but not less than their current pay. Okay? And then if you have demotions, so if you've got an employee who is demoted, and this by and large is poor performance or because the employee asked to go to a lower paying job. In these cases, if the pre-demotion pay is higher than the new position pay, you reduce it to the closest step to where they are, okay? And for the appropriate position. If their current pay exceeds the top pay for the lower position, then you reduce it to the top of that position. Okay, so we wanted to give you some structure to how you do this so that employees would know what that is. Okay. Another thing that we recommend coming out dealing with Gen Y and Gen Z is that you look at part-time employees, and you may consider creating what we call a part-time no benefit eligible employee. It's a whole new classification. But now what that means is they get an insanely increased pay, all right? So in this case, I gave the example, you might pay them $10 more an hour, but they get no benefits, no vacation, no holiday, no longevity pay, no medical, no dental. They get nothing because you're taking all that money and you're moving it over here to that part-time pay. Now, not every job is it reasonable to do this? And the reason we do it is because those Gen Ys and Gen Zs, primarily Gen Zs, quite frankly, they're not interested in working a 40-hour week. And so part of the reason that we're not able to get enough candidates for some of our positions is because you're trying to attract people that don't want to work 40 hours, but you might be able to attract 2 to work 20 hours each. Let's pay them a whole bunch, let's throw a whole bunch of money because they care more about the money than they do the benefits. That will change one of these days, right? But
I don't know if it will.
well, it might not. And some of that depends on some of the decisions that people like yourselves make.
Well, the reason I say that is, and Rex was at the hospital, and I think he knows that some part-time nurses or nurses assistants may, just as you're saying, may very well be getting paid more than full-time.
Absolutely. It's very common in the hospital systems. With my registered nurses, my NPs, my PAs, some of those, I mean, literally, we may pay them $10 an hour. Now, here's what you have to do, though. Hospital systems are not always good at this piece. What you have to do is when you give them an offer letter, that offer letter clearly states you are getting, your base pay is this, you're getting $10 an hour more because you are a part-time, no benefit employee, okay? You delineate the two, okay? If you decide to go into a full-time benefited position, that $10 an hour goes away, okay? And that's the reason you don't just give them an offer letter that says you're making $20 an hour or $22 an hour if we think about that sanitation worker. You say, as a sanitation worker, you make $12 an hour, We're giving you an additional $10 an hour as a premium for part-time, no benefits. But it works just like a shift differential. If I get a shift differential for working the afternoon shift and I take a job on the day shift, I lose my shift differential. Everybody understands that. But a lot of people are not good at making that very clear as a condition of employment. And then when they move and they didn't understand it and it wasn't clearly written out in their offer letter, now they're disgruntled. And now you stand to lose them. Have you seen that?
No, we've seen a lot that really just wanted the extra pay so they went PRN.
Well, let me tell you, a good PRN that's reliable is worth its weight in gold sometimes.
Our solution was to pay PRNs the same as full-times, but still offer benefits. That way
Yeah.
you keep your full-times and
Yeah.
more people are happy.
And you know, that's why you have to kind of massage this to figure out what works for you. Okay, there's not a one-size-fits-all anymore. For 10 years, I've been recommending these different benefits. We talked about pay for knowledge. Now, you guys already pay for required training, and that's great. There are some things here, so remember we talked about those job progressions from a maintenance 1 to a maintenance 2 to a maintenance 3 or a patrol officer or whatever. So they have to get additional training. You pay for that. One of the things you might consider is when they complete all their training, giving them a 1-step increase as a way of recognizing that they've completed those certifications. It's a one-time deal though, okay? We talked about reward and recognition. Now, this gets really squirrely in the public sector, whether it's cities or counties. Everybody's scared of it. I think Curtis has, you know, some really good ideas here. The point here is that you create an opportunity. Government workers are known notoriously at any level for being overlooked in some cases, right? They do a lot. There's not always a lot of recognition for that. And this would just be something really simple. As simple as giving a department manager a budget, whether it's for hats, for t-shirts, for gift cards, whatever. Somebody goes above and beyond. You know, it's 6:30. We're sitting here. We've got somebody who went above and beyond. Phyllis, maybe, in this case. And maybe not Phyllis, because she may be an exempt employee, but we've got somebody who's an hourly employee. They've gone above and beyond, and we say, hey, go have lunch tomorrow on me. I really appreciate all you did to get ready for this meeting. Right? Just something to show them genuine appreciation. That's it. That's all I got. That was enough, wasn't it?
That's good, my water broke.
Okay, we need to talk about that. I want to learn more.
Again, this is not a voting meeting, and I want to thank Ms. Cindy Bryant and her company, HR Solutions, for working very diligently with me, with Phyllis, with the employees here to come up and study. I think that we would all agree this is a very thorough study that wasn't put together overnight. I think the ball is now in our court. I like some of the, I like a lot of the things that were said today. It is my turn to start crunching some numbers to see where we are. And I think, as Ms. Bryant says, it's not our goal to get there tomorrow, but it should be our goal to get there within a reasonable amount of time when it comes to pay. Obviously, as the 4% increase that she recommended immediately in our immediate world would be July 1. That would be our immediate budget year. So that's kind of where we are. And but I want everyone to take the report, dig into it. Not that she didn't do a good job, but you know, I don't want to throw this to you tonight. That's why I had a work session and not a call meeting. But I do plan on putting on the May agenda with delivery to you all some numbers on what this would look like going into the budget year, and if we're ready. So I'll go to work on that, Ms. Bryant, if we're ready. In case there are some questions, I'd like for you to be here in May. We meet again on,
Is it May 1st?
First Monday in May.
I think that's the 1st, isn't it?
Is it?
I believe it is.
It is May 1st.
May 1st, that's what I thought.
So let me go to work
Okay.
and put some numbers together. I really like this, and I think as you've heard tonight, in certain spots, we're behind the eight ball. And public safety being one, which probably can explain the reason why we have lost employees and the turnover rate at 53%. But I don't necessarily, that 53% just wasn't the city of Livingston, right?
No, not at all.
Government.
No, it was just government in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ordinary that is going on, you probably need to do it more often. The reason we gave you those 3%, 3 to 4% step increases is so by and large, notwithstanding anything extraordinary, you're going to stay pretty close to market by doing that. Okay?
Okay, is there any other questions? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you, Ms. Martin.
Okay, thank you.
I got a question for the board before we leave.
When are we gonna talk about our money again?
Ain't till the next election.
Yeah, that's.
No, we gotta make the rules before next election.
Thought we already changed the.
Yeah, we've been changing.
That's what we changed, I mean,
It was,
Well, it's eligible to have pay.
yeah,